All right. Welcome to the Nailed Pitch. My name is Carl Ponto. My company is called Squash and Stretch Productions. And the point of this LinkedIn Live series is to help startup founders understand what it takes to get funded, what it takes to succeed as a startup in today's challenging marketplace. I am super, super excited to have CJ Cornell as my guest today. CJ has an amazing backstory. He has done many, many things during his long and eclectic career, but one thing is for sure, he is living and breathing entrepreneurship. Over the past 25 years, he's been a serial entrepreneur, a venture capitalist, an engineer, a scientist, a professor, a mentor, and an author. Along the way, he's put himself through school by being a stand-up comedian and a sleight of hand magician. He majored in nuclear engineering and then has later worked on the first space shuttle. But he soon found his real calling was in starting and growing new ventures. CJ, thank you so much for being on the show and tell us more about your awesome experiences.
I had forgotten that the stand-up comedian and magician was in the bio. Yeah, and so quickly over the course of my career, I started or founded 6 companies, but I've been co-founder or startup management in several others as well. But I never realized what my performing background had added to the startup experience, being able to speak impromptu, etc. But I started out, my parents, like a lot of parents, encouraged me to get a traditional career. They wanted me to be an engineer, to work in a big company. I almost tried to do that. I worked, for NASA, Grumman Corporation, actually, on this first space shuttle, and was an engineer for a while. But in graduate school, got sucked into a startup. I say that in a good way, it was just a normal state of affairs for me ever since. I did have a few stints in large companies, but it was always a spin-off startup. So Disney, I worked for Disney for a while, but they had a spin-off startup called Americast, which was a new television network, and the same thing with Sun Microsystem. But, if you're interviewing for a job, they call that eclectic experience. Somewhere along the line, I got a PhD and became a professor at Arizona State University. And we helped start their entrepreneurship program back in, I hate to use years because it makes me sound old, but 2007, 2008, we went from having almost nothing to being #2 in the country for entrepreneurship programs. And somewhere there, I cashed out of another company, not rich, but I ended up putting some money into some other companies as an angel. I spent a year and a half as a venture capitalist, learned a lot and hated every minute of it, only because I'm an entrepreneur and I hated saying no to so many entrepreneurs. And I didn't like seeing so many entrepreneurs stumble and fail in approaching us. I don't like the word pitching, but approaching us. And there was no way that I was not in a position to help them. And so I ended up going back into entrepreneurship after that. And that leads us all the way to around here. In the past few years, I've been writing books about entrepreneurship. Had a minor bestseller called The Age of Metapreneurship a couple of years ago. I have a new book coming out all about mentorship, and a children's book about entrepreneurship coming out this year. So now that brings us all up to date.
Cool. And so what were some of the things you saw founders do that caused them to stumble as they were approaching you as a VC?
Well, now I had a couple of niches, so I can't speak that these are common problems to, I think they are. But a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly first-time entrepreneurs, I don't want to say young, but first-time, because it's common for somebody who's in their 40s or 50s to start a company for the first time and make the same mistakes, which is they just assume that the idea is great without getting validation. I know that's an obvious one, but what I want to drill down on that just a bit. The folks that are older usually have experience in their industry, and therefore their assumptions are more apt to be right. Their execution might be wrong, but their assumptions might be right. The younger folks have no experience in domains. It's probably their first time they're an entrepreneur, may even be their first job. And they're making a lot of assumptions about, so for instance, my field was media. cable television, film, and all that technology. And this is back in the 2000s when people were making new set-top boxes and new kind of TV channels. And everybody was starting either a new channel or creating a new set-top box or a new streaming technology, and they had never worked in it, the field or anything. And so it was a mess. I mean, their idea may have been okay, but all their assumptions about the business model, which could have easily been checked by doing a little customer discovery, or a lot of it. And it's not immune to entrepreneurs. Microsoft, Google, Apple have all made the same mistake when trying to enter, for instance, the cable and media industry. People don't remember Microsoft tried 2 or 3 times and many billions of dollars, thinking, how hard can it be? It's technology. But since they didn't know the industry, they failed. Google, same thing. So it's not just entrepreneurs, but so these are what I call unforced errors, things where it's, especially with the internet, it's cheap to learn. You can reach out to people and learn, but a lot of entrepreneurs don't do that. It's ready, fire, aim. And I get that, but there's no excuse for not being up to speed. And so that's one of the biggest mistakes.
Yeah, I can totally see. I mean, I see a lot with as well with gotta go to all these pitch events where people are given a couple minutes to present their idea, and the way they present it is they think it's like the most amazing, original, amazing idea that no one's ever done before. And then the couple of investors that are watching this go, well, what about this? And you can see just from one question, their entire pitch start to crumble, and they realize it's not as compelling or brilliant as they thought it was. And so when you're, what is it that you did? So you had a couple successful exits over the course of your career. What do you think you did right with those that really helped them be successful?
I shudder away from anybody who thinks they know the right way to do anything in entrepreneurship. Luck and timing play a terrific factor. And most people don't appreciate that, particularly the successful people tend not to, most of them tend not to appreciate how much luck and timing or even privilege. I don't like to bring up that word, but being at the right place at the right time. And I look back on my career and I say, wow, that was an opportunity and I didn't realize it. That was a gift somebody gave me. They were offering me something and I never realized it. So the best entrepreneurs are really, understand when there is an opportunity in front of them. That's really not easy to do. And so sometimes you grab the opportunity because you're just plain lucky. And there are some people that just push away luck with 2 hands, or they delay it. You give them a lucky break and they say, okay, I'll get back to you. And I don't know if it's nerves or fear of success. But so that part is being able to realize luck and timing. The other one that I realize is there's far too much stress placed on the pitch. And it's important. It's very important. But I mean, the pitch at the time of the pitch, preparation is 95% of it. And when I say preparation, I mean more than the pitch. I mean, there is no better time in this world to position yourself to venture capitalists, to investors through social media as the expert in your field. They should have heard of you before you stepped into that room, before you were in that pitch contest. There's no reason that they haven't. If your niche is I'm going to make up something, some crypto healthcare, for 14-year-old girls. All right. I'm just making that up, but okay. You should be on LinkedIn and on, TikTok, Facebook as the expert of that field, telling us why it's going to be big, telling us the nuances of it every day. Okay. So that by the time there's an investor who's interested in that, you're the go-to person. They'll call you. All right. There's no reason that you can't do that today. 20 years ago, it was a lot harder. The point is, by the time you do a real, and when I say a real pitch, I mean in the VC office, not in the pitch contest, they should have heard of you already. They should already be intrigued. You should already be positioned as one of the top 3 experts in that very narrow niche. I think I strayed away from your question, but I hope
that's great. Yeah, I think it's people think that or make the mistake of thinking that getting investor funding is like a transaction, or really it's a relationship. And if you build that trust and that visibility early on before you're asking for money, then when it comes time to ask for investors to fund you, you're not another random person asking for money. It's someone they've gotten to know and like and hopefully trust, and it's much more effective. And but I wanted to actually touch back. And you said that you mentioned all like that. A lot of luck and timing plays a big role, and I've heard that a lot from other people, but about just how big of a factor timing is on success. I've heard some stories about how there was some company that was like a year before Airbnb got super big was trying to pitch the exact same thing and got nothing. And as a year later, Airbnb took off, and it was the same basic model. So what do you recommend founders do, since they can't control necessarily the timing of what can they do to be prepared, so when there is an opportunity coming across them, their field of vision and they're in range, they can be ready to take advantage of it. They don't have that, oh, I'll get back to you later, and then miss these amazing once in a lifetime opportunities. What do you recommend people do to prepare and be alert and aware to look out for those things?
Well, preparation without action, it means that you're just in your basement reading books. All right. And action without preparation is just reckless, and you're going to fail. Right. So you need both. And that's the problem, is that there are people who are good at preparation, meaning learning, building, behind the scenes. And there are people who are good at action, but don't prepare. The entrepreneur who's good at a little bit of both is going to be there when the luck and timing are there. And so when things are not happening, that's the time to prepare. All right. I've been through 2 recessions, at least 2 big recessions in my lifetime as an entrepreneur. And those are the times when you say, okay, well, there's not going to be a lot of business coming in or a lot of activity. This is the time to build or rebuild whatever it is I'm doing, to prepare for that big day when I get the meeting or the customer or so. With today's internet and all the tools available and communications, and Zoom makes it a lot easier to get meetings with people and experts. There's no reason why you can't be the most prepared person in the world. All right. And particularly as you narrow your field, again, nobody just goes in and says, I'm a computer entrepreneur. Right. Or a software entrepreneur. It's some, specific niche. And there's no reason that you can't prepare in public, by the way, for it. People will give you feedback. If you're out there as the Steve Jobs of your niche, or pick a female one, the Sarah Blakely of your niche, and people are looking to you to learn, they'll come to you, they'll line up. They want to give you information. They want to help move you forward. That's part of the preparation, is being out there too on social media. So preparation is not just digging up information or building, it's also being open so that when people contact you, they're going to give you connections. Connections is part of preparation as well. There's no better time for this than now. And it's amazing how many entrepreneurs maybe don't realize the luck of having social media and access to the internet and access to people, which is unprecedented. So there's no reason why you can't be prepared.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple things in your answer, which I think is great, about what it means to be prepared, about building the relationships and beginning on social media. So what if you have a little checklist of the top 5 things that entrepreneurs, founders should be doing to be prepared for these opportunities? How would you recommend they prioritize those?
Well, before you even do that, you need to be a little bit fearless. All right. And when I say fearless, not to fear embarrassment and not to fear getting it wrong. And that's not easy to do. I have a hard time doing that too. No one, want to be embarrassed or feel embarrassed. So you ever look on social media and there's somebody posting about some field that you know a little bit about, as if they're the big expert, and you're looking at them saying, that's wrong, or they don't know what they're talking about. But the more they do it, the more people look at them as the expert. Why? Because they're out there, they're doing it. Yeah, they may be wrong 10% of the time or embarrassed 20% of the time, but they're out there doing it. So The social media aspect, I don't just mean connecting with people. I mean being the visible expert out there. And I'll give you an example of somebody not quite in entrepreneurship, but Harry Stebbings, who's a podcaster in UK, very young and looks even younger. And he had no experience in pretty much anything. And he started the podcast about venture capital every day. Okay. And then eventually got interviews with venture capitalists. And eventually, especially in Europe, where there's not as much activity as there is here with venture capital, he became the most visible expert on venture capital in Europe and even in part of the US. And he was the point man for visibility when venture capitalists wanted visibility, just in the past 2 years. And because then he built his network and built his expertise just by interviewing venture capitalists, just by interviewing. He wasn't even the expert. He now has his own venture capital fund. All right. They gave him money, hundreds of millions of dollars to run a venture capital fund. I mean, the guy doesn't even look like he's 15 years old. All right. He's probably in his early 20s or so.
At least 17 years old. At least 17.
17? Yeah.
At least 17 years old. Yeah.
Sure, I thought he was a little older than that, but
I don't know.
This is an extraordinary example, but there's many examples like that where you become the attractor, and people, once you're out there, people want to be associated with you, whether it's being interviewed, you could write about them. I do that too. I mean, I have an interview series called 5.5 Questions, where I reach out to CEOs and very famous people. The last guy I interviewed was Craig of Craigslist.
Oh, wow.
But I interviewed Michael Crow and, some CEOs of important companies. And, I did it. And once you start doing it, they want to come to you. Interviews is one way to do it. Podcasting, just posting interesting articles with a little comment on it, positions yourself. And then people come to you, all right, with the latest, or saying, I got a company that does this. That helps with your preparation, knowing, what the latest is behind the scenes, and it helps you formulate what it is you have to do to seize an opportunity when that opportunity comes. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, and it's like you said, it's never been easier for founders to get out there and get visible and make the sort of connections and share their knowledge and even connect with existing experts and network up in a way.
I'll add to that is that you do that before you think you're ready. That's the problem. Yeah. A lot of people that, I'm not ready for it. I don't know enough. No. This is part of the preparation process. You do it before you're ready.
Yeah, I think that's. I think a lot of founders have issues with that. Also, when it comes to like their MVP for their product, they want to make sure they try and perfect it before it even is seen by a client or a customer. And say, well, how do you know it's perfect until the client tells you it's perfect or they're happy with it? Well, how can you learn all that, like, more about the industry without talking to people that are already immersed in it? And just if you wait till you feel you're ready, you're never going to start.
Right.
And it's just yes, you want to be strategic about it and plan, but you don't want to I eventually have to kind of get started and do some actions towards that bigger goal. If you just kind of mentally ruminate on what you should be doing or prepare, and then you're going to miss out on.
I'll give another tip that's a little less risky, and this is very unique to our times today, is Zoom. And what I mean by that is that in prior years, in my day, 20 years ago, 15, is if I wanted to get meetings with people, industry leaders, experts, people who could either help or help me understand where the opportunity was in their industry, I would have to network a lot, get an introduction to some executive, and then get on their calendar, and maybe even go and meet with them or have a phone call. That was hard, particularly with their schedules, et cetera. Now, today with Zoom, executives always have Zoom on their desktop. And if you say, hey, or network and say to somebody, look, I'm interested in, this aspect of the industry. And I'm thinking of starting a company with it. I was just curious if you had 10 minutes to chat with me on Zoom. Okay, 10 minutes, especially if you say 9 or 10 minutes and you keep it within that. There's not, they'll take a break with their cup of coffee, click on Zoom and do that with you. You may not get 50% of your requests to say yes, but 50% is a really good percentage, by the way. And but you can get anybody in the world. It's not relegated to a phone call or anybody in your local. So you can learn a lot, and particularly if it's from people who are not entrepreneurs, they love just chatting for a few minutes, about something interesting. As long as you're, not wasting their time, you're not a total idiot. It's not hard to do that, to get, network and to get some information from folks. And now if they give you 10 minutes of their time and their advice, here's a little secret. They have a little bit of a vested interest now in whether you're going to take their advice and succeed. So when you loop back around with them and, and tell them what happened later as a result of that, they perk up a bit. They actually have, they are more interested now in your journey, particularly if something they said has helped you along. So Zoom and today's era of people having time for quick Zoom calls is a big boon for new entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's the being able to take the location out of the ability to connect with people, and a lot of the commute time it would take to meet people in person has made reaching out and forming these relationships way easier and way less disruptive. Like I said, they could hop on for 10 minutes between meetings, and kind of that, instead of having to block out a huge amount of time for a simple chat like this. So we talked about the importance of being kind of ready for like timing and opportunities to come across and on the preparation, and about how preparation is often about building these relationships and being known as a subject matter expert. When it comes to, there's a big trend right now with just how conservative and risk averse investors have gotten compared to, say, this time last year. What are your thoughts about the founders that go and just try and get revenue and put off getting funded until they have some more traction with the market? Are you seeing that as the right way to do things these days? What are what's your take on the current state of how funding is being doled out or not doled out?
Well, that's a tough one, because for entrepreneurs, it's always tough to get funding, especially if you're an early stage entrepreneur with no prior connections, etc. In my career, in the beginning, it was very hard because I was first time. I didn't know how to. I don't want to say didn't know how to pitch. It's just that I didn't practice as much as I should have. Okay, and that's important, practice. When I say practice, telling everybody, getting that feedback loop. Okay. And so the first time I got funding, it was complicated. It didn't turn out well for my equity and dilution. Second time, it was better. Third time, the fourth time that I started the company, it was a 1/2 page business plan that I just faxed over, or rather sent over to an angel that I know. And it was with another co-founder, and the deal was sealed within like a day and a half. So it gets easier the more track record you have. All right. That's the first thing. All right. Yeah. But not just that, you get better at it. Okay. And so there are founders who are embarrassed, if that's the word I'm looking for. But not only on social media, but personally, they don't want to disclose what it is they do. Or when the first time they do it, they fumble it, because the layman that they're explaining it to says, "Oh, so it's this," and they say, "No, that's not what I said. That's a gift." That when I say gift, I mean when you try to pitch to somebody or explain it to your aunt and uncle or some stranger that you met, and they didn't hear what it was you intended on saying. Listen to that, because that's a terrific feedback loop, and then adjust. because here's the big goal when you're preparing and you're planning to pitch is tell everybody when they give you that feedback, you'll get it right. When you get it right, they will then be able to tell what it is that you do to somebody else without you being there. Okay. And that's how you know when you've gotten it right. I paid a terrible price for not being able to articulate what it is our company did. One of my first bigger ventures. And even within our company, I had about 18 people working. We were looking for our Series A, call it A at the time. And I knew what we were doing. I could articulate it on paper. Within the company, I thought everybody was able to repeat it. And one day, one of our creative people at the company was in a supermarket, ran into an old college buddy and the college buddy said, "Hey, what are you doing these days?" He said, told them, what he was doing with our company. The college buddy said, "Oh, I'm a venture capitalist now. So tell me what it is, the pitch that you're doing." The guy fumbled it, but it wasn't his fault that my employee fumbled it. It wasn't his fault. It was my fault because I didn't articulate it enough for him to repeat it. And without knowing it, because I wasn't there, we blew a really good VC opportunity because I wasn't able to articulate what it is we did so that somebody else could repeat it. That is really important. And the way you do that is just practice without getting frustrated. People are going to oversimplify what it is that you do. They may get it wrong. They're going to say, "Oh, so it's like Uber for something." And you're like, "No, not exactly." Let them say it as long as it's close enough. But you can get a lot of practice for free out there. And then the next step is maybe on social media to get people, when you post a news story that's in your industry with a comment, you could say at the end of it, "And our XYZ company is attempting to solve that problem by doing this." All right. And eventually people will start to get what it is that you do to repeat it to others. I think I strayed away from your question there, but hopefully.
No, that's great because it's something that I see this a lot with that founders struggle with, that where they think that, I think a lot of other businesses do it, where they it's kind of like the curse of knowledge, where you're so immersed in it, you understand it so well, you think other people understand it just as well as you, and so you fail to communicate it clearly in the way that your audience understands, because you make a bunch of assumptions and you use terms they don't use or they don't understand. And so it always helps. It's basically not just always helps, it's necessary, it's essential to practice explaining what you do and telling your story and all those things with people that are not related to you, that don't understand the business, that aren't like your peers. And so you get that honest feedback of, "I have no idea what you just said," or are they trying to repeat it back and they're not quite right, or they try and sum it up and it's a little bit off, because it's less important about what you understand and it's all about what they understand about what you do and the problem it solves and the impact it can have. Because if they don't get it, you're not explaining it clearly enough. And I see that as a huge problem that a lot of founders struggle with, because they focused on the engineering or the science and the technology in their training, or like their schooling or their careers, and they haven't learned the communication, the storytelling, the how to reframe their messaging to fit an audience, and it comes back and bites them in the bum.
For an entrepreneur, you want to have people understand the details correctly and accurately. And if they get it a little bit wrong, you want to correct them. And you know what? Let them get it wrong as long as they get the top level. That's the important part. And when they truly get it, when they start brainstorming out loud stuff that you've already thought about, but they'll say, "Oh, I get it. You could do this with it." And you've already thought of that. You're already way ahead of them. But once they start doing that, that they truly get it. In the beginning, like with Airbnb, I could just imagine, well, I don't have to imagine, people were saying, "What, you're going to let strangers in your house? Couch surfing, it's for kids," and all of that. And then, and then somebody says, once they start getting, oh, it's a technology where it will allow people to go anywhere and it will protect them, with this amount of technology, and then people say, oh, so if I go to a conference and the hotels are all booked, I can do this, right? Or if I want to take an exotic vacation, I can do that. Now, I'm sure Airbnb guys have already thought of all that, but they didn't have to say, if they said all of that in the beginning, it would have been too overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? And in the beginning, if the people just got the basics of it with all of rough edges and flaws that you want to correct them on, don't. Right? You just get them, have the high level. And once they get it, they will start getting excited and extrapolate all the stuff that you've thought about for months. Right?
Yeah.
And the important part, I want to, again, stress this, is just that they get it enough so that they're excited enough to repeat it to somebody else. I call it the cocktail party effect. And not just with laymen, but with venture capitalists, because if a venture capitalist can't repeat it to somebody else credibly, right? Both of them look bad, but
Yeah.
they say, you know what, I guess I don't get it, or it's not as good as I thought, right? But if they can repeat it in such a way that it makes them look good, all right, then you've got something, then they want that meeting, all right? And that takes practice, but it's cheap practice, because you could do it with anybody, anywhere.
Yeah, it's you hinted at like not having too much information all at once because it overloads people. That's another mistake I see a lot of founders make when they're pitching, is they try and cram 10 minutes of information into a 2-minute pitch, and your eyes just glaze over because you just can't take in all the information. And it's
Yep.
and they seem to forget that the whole point of the first pitch is just to get the second meeting with the investors. Not, you don't need to know all the information. They're going to do the due diligence later and go into way more detail than you're probably comfortable with, and to learn all your dirty little secrets and air out all the dirty laundry you might have in there. But so you don't need to show it all at the first pitch. You just got to get them to say, okay, I understand the overall umbrella top level view of what you're doing and why it's important and it has merit. And let's do another meeting to go over the due diligence. And it just, that sort of understanding of the process of getting funded is something that I think a lot of people have misconceptions about.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to add on, not modify, abstract a little bit what you just said. Is
Sure.
You said that the purpose of the 2-minute or whatever the pitch is to get the meeting. And let me abstract that. Is the purpose of the first 2 minutes of your pitch is to get them to ask you for the next 2 minutes of your pitch. Okay. And or however you want to rephrase that, is you want to give them just enough so that they say, oh, tell me more, or give me another meeting. All right. Not I used to be like all the other entrepreneurs. I wanted to tell you everything. All right. And I have so many failure stories or embarrassing. There was a venture capitalist who knew me from another time before he was a venture capitalist. Now he's a venture capitalist. He invited me to his office because I think in his mind it's like I was somebody he wanted to fund. I came there. He wanted the conversation. He wanted to find out about what I was doing these days. I had a venture, but he wanted the conversation, and which is normal. They don't want to normally. I insisted on showing him every single slide of my PowerPoint. All right, and he was getting bored, and I didn't even realize, because I worked so hard on the pitch and the PowerPoint, and I think I just bored him out of interest at that point, where he was ready to do it. He was ready for the next conversation, the next one. And that's not uncommon. I needed for him to know all the details when that wasn't the details he wanted to know.
Yeah.
And it happens so often that the entrepreneur just wants you to know all the details of it. And that's not it. When the VC wants details, they will explicitly ask for them. And it's never a good idea. It's like what do they say with lawyers? Don't ask a question you don't want the. I forget how it goes, but
don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
Yeah, but so there may be a similar phrase that I may want to make up, but don't give too much information that they didn't ask for yet. Okay,
Yeah.
it's only going to hurt you, not help you. And so That's a big one there. I forget where we would go. Oh, so but going through the process of funding, there's two parts. One is the investor, and there is a difference between venture capital firms, angel groups, and individuals. Individuals usually don't have a formal process. Angel groups and venture capital firms do have a more formal process. And that's the first thing to realize, and it takes longer. But there's more money, of course, up the food chain of when they become more organized, but it takes a little longer. But be prepared, of course, for the process. But if they're interested enough to put you through the process, they want to help you too. Okay, take that again. Once somebody says, I'm interested in exploring this as a serious investment, for the moment, they want it to work. And so they're a minor partner in this for you. Obviously they're looking for reasons to say no, to rule out, but they're looking for good stuff too. And they're there to help you. Understand that. When it comes to individual angels, it's hard to, unless they're famous and they have a track record already, it's hard to know what their values are, what they want. There are some angels and groups and VC firms, but there are some angels that want the solid financials and revenues, and they want to know that you're going to have cash soon. There are other angels who don't care about that. They want to know that you're going to be the next Uber or the next home run or the next Facebook. None of those made revenues for the first 3 or 4 or 5 years. Or rather positive revenues. And because it didn't matter. What mattered was dominating the market, getting out there quickly. And it depends on what their values are. Find out. This is not difficult. I want to say it's easy, but it's not difficult to find out what the values are. And if you're that type of company, you may be the type of company that's going to start making revenues, profits, and having all of those 3-letter customer acquisition cost and ARR and all of that. And there are angels that care a lot about that. There are others who just care that you're going to be the next Google, and they found you. Know that beforehand.
Yeah, it comes back to the being prepared and getting to know the angels or the VCs before you need the funding, so you know what your audience, what they're going to care about, so you can craft your message accordingly and not end up boring them to tears and talking yourself out of an investor.
Right. And I'll say craft your message and your venture accordingly, but don't bend it to fit artificially. There are some that's just not a good match. All right.
Yeah. I meant more like crafting your messaging, not your company, but just if you're trying to present to them, we're going to present the things they're going to look for, whether it's the ARR or if you're going to be the next like Google or Uber. Those 2 different groups, you wouldn't use the same deck to pitch to both of those individuals because they have 2 different priorities. They care about 2 different things, and you want to tailor your message to match what they care about and not just be what you think is exciting and then talk them to death.
Well, if you look at some of the largest companies and ventures today, let's take Google. Google had an algorithm. They didn't even know what was going to, they knew it was going to be some kind of search engine, but it was really just an algorithm. And they were introduced to a guy named Andy Bechtolsheim, who he was one of the co-creators of Unix, if I'm not mistaken, but he was one of the co-founders of Sun Microsystems. So he had money on his own. And a professor at Stanford introduced them. Bechtolsheim got it right away when the Google guys went to his house, and he got it more than they did. Wrote him a check on the spot for $150,000. All right, it was their first money. They didn't even have a checking account. The funny story was what do we call the company? Google Inc., Google Corporation, just Google. And I think Larry said, well, whatever's on the check is what we're going to name the company. And they had to look at the check to figure out what they're going to name the company. And Facebook, similarly, it took a Sean Parker to recognize how big and the implications that this was more than just a college network. It took Peter Thiel to realize how big that was going to be. So you want to find somebody who's going to recognize you for that diamond in the rough rather than to convince and convince and convince. And so you got to be ready for that. But if it's somebody who's not a good match, who you're going to have to keep on just proving and proving and proving, it may be, a better route to go. If you're a healthcare life sciences venture that's going to require $50 million in 7 years of FDA approval to get out there, a lot of angels are not going to be the right fit for you. You may have other funding vehicles, whether it's university funding or something. There's no sense in going down that route or pitching for a $20,000 prize and spending your time doing that when it's not going to make a dent in it. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Doing a little preparation about who it is you're talking to. Now, I might say it wouldn't be wasted if you tried to pitch them, because you may get them excited, but they know that they're not the right match.
Yeah.
But if they can articulate it, they know people.
Yeah, they know people.
Yeah, and they'll say, they'll talk to somebody else. You can even ask them, I know this isn't right for you. Maybe you can give me a little feedback. And if they can repeat it, they may say, oh yeah, let me just see, maybe I'll just pass it along to somebody else. It's not wasted, but it would be wasted if you just kept on focusing on that investor.
Yeah, so this is we're pretty much at time. This has been an awesome discussion, very insightful. Love the story about Google, and we'll just call whatever's on the check. I didn't know about that. That was funny. There's one, like, what people want to learn more about you and check out some more of your work, or what can they do to reach out and connect with you?
Oh, I'm easy. CJ Cornell. You can either Google me or cjcornell.com, cjcornell.net. I'm all over. You can search me on Amazon. I've got a couple of books. I have a textbook on entrepreneurship, which, unless you're in college, you probably wouldn't be interested in, and The Age of Metapreneurship. And then coming at the end of March, pre-order for the Startup Brain Trust. But cjcornell.com, and through there, you can find out a lot more about what I'm doing, and it's easy to contact me through the website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and have a good rest of your week.
My pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome.